Glenn Grady and Don White were very different men who both loved boats. Glenn "Bud" Grady from Wisconsin started with Racine Boat Works and later worked with Chris Smith of Chris-Craft before joining Thompson Boat Works, a company famous for quality in wooden lapstrake or clinker-built boats. In 1953, Thompson spawned Cruisers Boat Works, and with his top-caliber work, Bud Grady was promoted to sales manager. Don White was a Carolina man who enjoyed boating on open water. He was an entrepreneur, and when Cruisers Boats and its new sales manager came looking for a distributor, the Grady and White partnership began. In 1959, G&W Boats began in the tumble-down Star Warehouse in Greenville, North Carolina. Given the spirit of Don White and the legacy of Bud Grady, the company's future seemed bright. Initially, Grady-White produced a 16-foot runabout, the Pamlico, and a 17-foot Hatteras. The first boats shipped in February 1960. The company gained a reputation for quality. The clinker boats that challenged comparison attracted the attention of many, like bandleader Guy Lombardo here at the plant with Glenn and Don. The boats were works of art. Grady-White initially succeeded. By '65, there were 13 models, from the Pamlico to the 33-foot Sea Skiff. But consumers began to demand fiberglass. Grady and White did start the conversion to fiberglass production. Even so, they were falling behind in technology, as well as with up-to-date business practices. By 1967, Grady and White were ready to sell the company. During the 1950s, a young man with little thought of boats was growing up enjoying the outdoors around Lexington, North Carolina. Edward C. Smith, Jr. shared a sense of independence with his father, known to all as George. George had raised himself by the bootstraps and founded one of the world's first mail-order pantyhose businesses. The Monday after graduation from UNC Chapel Hill, Eddie moved back to Lexington with his young family and went to work selling hosiery. Yet he was burning with independent spirit. A chance encounter changed everything. In 1967, Eddie flew to Greenville, ferrying a partner in one of Don White's businesses. Eddie visited Grady-White and learned of its financial trouble. Opportunity seemed to knock. Eddie talked with his father, and with George's support, he bought Grady-White boats. (1968). Eddie was captain of his own ship. Yet with no practical experience with boats, he knew one thing was certain: he needed help. On the advice of the Smith family's trusted advisors, Wiley Corbett came on board to provide the manufacturing know-how. The two men worked in tandem. Wiley headed up factory operations. Eddie, knowing that sales was the engine of fortune, hit the road to convince dealers to give his new Grady-White a chance. Along with him was factory sales rep Bing Fishman, who'd been hired by White and Grady. Eddie's enthusiasm convinced Bing to stay with the new company. In those days, dealers changed boat brands like underwear. The team first called on dealers who had carried the wood boats. As Bing introduced him, Eddie's energy and excitement were a winning combination. The dealers were sold on Eddie as much as his boat line. Katamet Boats and Port of Egypt stayed on board. And into the 1970s, new dealerships were recruited, including Anchor Marine, Barrett, Bayside, Beacon Light, Beaver Park, Boats Incorporated, Cannons, Crockers, Fishtail, Hobby Lobby, Mayors, now Summers Point, Norfolk Marine, Southeastern Marine, Spellman's, Spraydock, and Taylor Marine. Today, 40 years later, Grady still works with the second and even third generations of the family businesses who came to believe in Eddie's dream. Back at the plant, Wiley immediately addressed the big issues. From the very first, he rather firmly instilled a powerful work and business ethic. Always know your total cost became the law. Modern business practices were put in place. Wiley and Eddie thus began the journey from making a good company a great company. Early on, Wiley and Eddie were quite content to make fiberglass boats off the existing woodhull molds. They continued to market the Nassau and the Chesapeake that were built from the fiberglass molds that Grady-White had already created. A 17-foot tri-hull, the Capri, also stayed in the line till '74. Wiley and Eddie's first independent design was the 16-foot Stingray with a closed bow, reinforced windshield, vinyl interior, and quality hand-laid fiberglass with a good riding chine. It was a great performer for skiing. Fishing did not enter the conversation. Grady-White made runabouts in the '70s. Vinyl liners, color-coordinated interiors, and padded seating ruled the day. Built-in cooler space was designed for refreshments. The Stingray spawned a line of 18-footers, the stern-drive Rogue Bowrider, the outboard Adventurer. A closed-bow version came along, the Challenger, and the stern-drive Baron. In short, Mr. Thrifty and Efficient Wiley Corbett built 4 boats off one hull. The more models, the more sales was his motto. So came the Sprint, Pacer, and Duke. And the 19-footers, the Sportsman, Angler, and Atlantic Weekender. Until 1977, the 21-foot Chesapeake and the Nassau were the biggest Grady-Whites. In 1973, Grady-White moved into a new factory, a facility that remains the most modern boat manufacturing plant. Chicago, 1974. On display was a multi-hull boat with a molded-in recessed walking area around the cabin. Eddie and Wiley decided to make a walk-around style on a single 20-foot V-hull. A fiberglass cockpit liner would make it self-bailing and easy to clean. Thus was born the 204C. It was never the same for Grady-White and the dealers. The 204C Overnighter was the company's biggest seller for years. This walk-around, along with the 204 Hatteras, Grady-White's first center console, marked the beginning of Grady's focus on fishing. 1975 was a year not only of new products, there also were critical hires. Wiley brought on a production control clerk, Chris Carroll, who showed drive, energy, detail, and a keen interest in people. Around this time, Doug Gomes joined manufacturing as a hull lamination leader. And David Neese began his Grady-White career building plugs. In 1976 came the first big Grady, the 25-foot Kingfish. Wiley shaped it with a raised shear line to get more cabin room and created today's spotted a mile off Grady profile. Grady-White craftsmen and dealers learned a lot with the Kingfish. By mid-1980, the outboard 25-foot Sailfish wowed the marketplace. 1977 saw a major turn to the fishing emphasis, and the introduction of 20-foot closed-bow cuddies was important as the company leaned towards saltwater fishing versus runabouts. Wiley, Eddie, and the whole Grady-White team were becoming saltwater fanatics. At the 1979 dealer meeting, Wiley had a surprise. No ski boats, he said. We're going to make fishing boats. Some dealers had mixed feelings. But in the 80s, if you worked with Grady-White, you learned to fish. Dealers joining the network in this decade included Capstan, Caribbean, Carabel, Catalano & Sons, Central Valley, Jacobson's, Killinger, now Marine Max of Central Florida, Mid-Carolina, Moorhead Marine, Naples Boat Mart, Nautica, Pompano Beach Marine, Port Harbor, Shock Boats, Seals Outboard, Tri-State, and Vero Marine. Many of these dealers held owners' tournaments and gatherings. By the end of this decade, Grady-White knew big water better than any production boat builder, period. 1980s boats included 19-footers plus 22-foot dual consoles, initially touted as alternatives to the center console. These models were not the place for long rides with the family. The same hardcore fishing concept soon emerged in the 24-foot tournament series, and there were hardcore center consoles too. In 1983, the 22-foot Seafarer debuted and is still in the lineup in 2009. The 22 offered optional heads and hardtops plus comfortable seating, in some respects reflecting Grady-White's basic design dilemma of the 80s and 90s, finding the right balance between hardcore fishing and family boating. and in 1984, the lap-strike look was gone for good. By 1987, the Offshore Pro 24 and the Trophy Pro 25 evolved the family-friendly walk-around to a hardcore fishing machine. By 1991, the Dolphin 25 was the pinnacle of that ideal. In truth, Grady-White was verging on becoming too hardcore, but the company and dealers sure did learn fishing boats very, very well. Grady-White typically built 3 versions of every model in those days: an outboard, a stern drive, and from 1981 to 86, the OMC Sea Drive. In 86, Grady enhanced outboard efficiency and replaced the Sea Drive with the Grady Drive bracket on the Gulfstream and others. With sales hot in 86, by 87, Grady offered nearly 30 models, and in 88 built a record number of boats. But Eddie and Wiley decided to limit production to enhance quality and customer service. During this decade, they brought on the other executive team members. Coming aboard were Jill Carraway as industrial engineer, Joey Weller began in manufacturing and quality assurance, Shelley Tubaugh started as customer service administrator, and in 1990, Mark Doggett began as quality assurance manager. The 1989 Marlin 28 was perhaps the most important new boat of the late 80s. Wiley and the engineering team, now including Chris and David, worked with C. Raymond Hunt and Associates to offer the biggest outboard boat built to that date, complete with integrated transom and the exclusive CV2 ride that revolutionized capability and comfort over the next 20 years. A ride that gave Grady-White an advantage that simply blew the competition away. Even with the success of the Marlin and the magnificent CV2 hull, Grady-White sometimes miscalculated. In 1991, Grady-White introduced an innovative 26-foot flybridge-style boat. The owners who bought the new design loved the boat with its CV2 ride, the integrated transom and roomy stand-up cabin, plus the galley and sizable enclosed head. But the bridge helm station took the driver out of the cockpit fishing action, and that was decidedly a drawback for Grady buyers at the time. The flybridge lasted only a few years, but the boat's beamy hull with its CV2 ride served as inspiration for later models. In 1993, Wiley retired and Chris took over as president, becoming the first woman to hold such a position for a major boat manufacturer. The CV2 hull and integrated transom was incorporated throughout almost the entire line by then, offering great comfort and satisfied customers. The company watched the baby boom generation have families, and by 1995, an enclosed head area was even on center consoles like the 263 Chase. Dual consoles like the 225G came into the line with as much emphasis on comfort as fishing. A family-oriented Voyager replaced the Explorer series. The integrated transom of the new CV2 hull necessitated outboards, and by 1991, Eddie Smith and Yamaha had worked out the first OEM agreement, and factory pre-rigging was well in place by 1995. Beginning with model year 1997 through 2000, Grady-White introduced 2 models of planing hull catamarans, the F-26 walk-around cabin and the X-26 center console. These boats were strongly backed by some of the dealers, and many in the trade believed that catamarans were the way of the future in sport fishing. The company had done diligent research and created catamarans that performed magnificently. They were roomy, comfortable, and proved to be superb fishing machines, especially in rough water. The catamarans remain greatly loved today by their owners, but there were trade-offs. The tooling was very difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. As a result, they carried a premium price. The catamarans also tended to draw focus away from Grady's excellent CV2 monohull ride and time-honored cabin and cockpit features. After a 4-year run, the breakthrough Grady catamarans were discontinued. Late in the 1990s, Grady-White also became the most complete builder of center consoles, with 7 size lengths from the 180 Sportsman to the 306 Bimini. Throughout the 1990s, Grady continued developing the dealer network. Coming aboard were H. Chalk & Sons, Land's End, Lockwood, Mariner, Resort Marine, Schilling, now Hilton Head, and Twin Cities. And Grady began to gain interest outside North America in the 90s, signing Boat Supply of Guatemala and People's Marine, now Boat Management of Puerto Rico. In 1998, Grady began its unique owners forums. The factory team travels to locations around the globe and, along with local dealers, meets directly with customers to gain a wide variety of feedback about the boats and how they're used. At the 2001 New York show, Grady introduced another breakthrough boat, the 330 Express, declared Boat of the Year by Boating Magazine. The 330 took full advantage of advances in outboard power and the cabin space opened up by outboards, and remains a champion fishing and family boat. Grady followed with the 360 Express, a boat competitive in accommodations but better in pricing compared to inboard-powered brands. And then the 305 Express. These Express models did not detract sales from the walkarounds. 2003 saw the introduction of the 225 Tournament, featuring an innovative enclosed head area. Grady followed up with the winning 185, 205, the 275 Ultimate Coastal Cruiser, and now the magnificent new 307. Plus, Grady bolstered its lead in center console offerings with a terrific 306 Bimini, and for 2008, the 336 Canyon. Dealers continued to rally to the Grady-White name, including Adriatic in Italy, Boat Center, Cypress Cove, Desmaisdens, Homosassa, Ingman, Marina Bahari, Marine Max of Texas, Parks Marina, Parker of Daytona, and Quality Boats. The awards for dealers and company continue to mount. Internally, Customer Service Awards and the prestigious Admiral Circle Award recognize dealer excellence in providing customer satisfaction. Most dealers have earned Marine Certified status from the NMMA. By 2009, Grady-White had received highest ranking in every third-party customer satisfaction study ever done in the industry. That's 8 J.D. Power & Associates awards and 7 NMMA CSI awards so far. Grady-White has worked long and hard to make the customer king, and as a result, higher resale value means the long-term cost of ownership is lower than other brands. Chances are excellent you will be delighted with a Grady-White purchase. All through these past 50 years, in good times and in tough years, it's been the personal relationships with our customers, through our dealers, our associates, and especially our company leaders, that helped ensure every success. No other boat company, none, has integrated a long-standing history of private ownership, decades of single-minded dedication to customer satisfaction, 50 years of experience, and an incredible combination of top management talents into a truly great company that delivers a superior boat ownership experience. No other boat company offers its customers the range of activities and events that Grady-White does, with club activities, owners forums, hundreds of dealer events, and the level of day-to-day dealership experience. It's not just fiberglass, stainless steel, and boat building quality that have brought us this far. Our success stems from our boat owners' experience and their feedback. Knowledge, skill, perseverance, and a determination to deliver the finest company-customer relationship and the finest on-the-water boating experience. These are the strengths that will bring us even more success for the next 50 years, as together we strive to deliver the ultimate boating experience to each and every customer.